And welcome to another edition of the Islandstats Sports Show. I'm your host, Earl Basin. Joining me is Juggling Jay, and we are hoping to be joined later by none other than Gary Coys Moreno. Juggler, he's scared again.
I told you. I told you. Season's about to start and he's running already.
Well, he's a busy fella
Okay,
outside.
restart. Probably hoping for another delay in the season.
Well, being that we're talking about delay, restarts, and all, we learned last week that the Bermuda Football Association, with the affiliates, called a halt to the 2019-2020 season. During a press conference, it was revealed that each team in the Premier Division and the First Division received a point with matches not played. So North Village would have finished the league with 40 points. Second place would have been I believe, the Dendy Town Hornets or Robin Hood, one of the two. And then they decided that the only one team would be relegated. That was the Boulevard Blazers. Unfortunately, they took the plunge with St. George's Colts and Devonshire Colts ruled as co-champions for the first division, thus allowing the 2020-2021 season to have 11 teams in the Premier Division. How do you think? How do you feel about that? Because at one point in time we had 12 teams in the first division. I mean, well, back then it was first division, but now we're down to we're at 11 with a team getting a bye each week.
Well, not to skip across the pond, but I think it was a lot easier decision that they're having right now in the EPL. With that same predicament, obviously a lot more games to be played, but teams vying to say, hey, nobody go down or who's going to come up or whatever. And because so much money is involved in that, so we have the luxury because it's an amateur sport. There's not so much money that's going to dictate the outcome of this. Is it fair? It's first things first, and I look at it as, take for instance, if you was a boxer, okay, and you was fighting and something happened in the fight. Say you was the champion and you was fighting in a fight and something happened where the fight was stopped. You would still feel that you would need to, for you to lose your belt, you had to be beaten, right?
Yeah.
And that's the way I would feel. I would feel because the season didn't end, you would have to at least give the benefit to the guys in the Premier Division.
True.
I mean, the guys, obviously, it's going to be interesting when there's teams, the three going down next season. I think that's going to add a good bit of competition in the Premier. And we all know the start of any of those seasons, next season is going to be pretty important for all teams involved.
Well, what I'm hoping is that we don't have a scenario where a team has played all their games, and that final week they could possibly go down or go up, but they're played all their games, so you're sitting on the sideline waiting for 90 minutes to go to find out your fate.
Yeah, and it's going to be. I mean, if you look at the teams who are vying to come up, it's going to be quite interesting with these teams coming up, and especially next year. You're looking at the new team in the first division of the last couple of years, Vasco. They're probably one of the favorites next year to actually come up.
Yeah.
The Boulevard going down, which is it's going to depend on what happens with the community around there. I mean, it's a good community down there, but depending on that community, if they don't get the players together, it might take a couple of seasons to rebound. Now, in the last 15, 20 years, when they have gone down, they've made a good return.
Yeah.
But, and I'll go back to even when Dave and those guys, I think Angie even helped out at time to bring them back. So they have made a good rebound, but it's going to be interesting. It's going to be interesting.
Interesting you talk about Vasco. They've come back out. There were so many stipulations put on them when they were re-entering into the league. You know, they could clubs put restrictions on them. They couldn't take players from outside of other clubs, and all sorts of stuff was put in place. But they've managed to finish the league in third place in only their second year, showing some consistency. So you're right in saying that they will be one of the favorites to get promoted next year. Now, the other important thing is there's been a lot of talk that Paget will return next season.
Yeah.
What will they look like? Remember, they got relegated from the Premier Division and then folded of sorts with a lot of players leaving. But with them coming back, will we see an influx of players going back to Paget and
And
then they become a threat?
and you just mentioned that, so let's look at where majority of those players went.
Yeah.
They went to Southampton Rangers.
Mm-hmm.
And you looked at Southampton Rangers. Well, I don't think they ended the season where they wanted to end the season,
No.
on the field or off the field.
Right. Right.
So, how many players are going to leave with all the instance they was having throughout the season?
Right.
And some folks may say, well, partially was to blame with some of the folks that came in. So, when these guys return back to their team, I'm not saying these are Patriot players, but I'm just saying in general,
Right.
it's going to be interesting because, we all notice that for these teams to survive in the Premier, they have to get at least 3 to 4 good players.
Yeah. Yeah.
And
In certain positions.
In certain positions.
You need a decent goalkeeper.
I
You
was
need
always
a good
taught.
center half, right down the middle, straight down the
I
middle.
agree. I was always taught the spine. I was always
Yeah.
taught the spine, and
Yeah.
you could feel big fillers on the rest.
Right.
But interestingly enough, in the first division, you can get away with 2 very good players.
Yeah, because in the first division, unless you're vying for right from the start, if you're not vying for the league title, most of those teams are inconsistent.
Yes.
You get one week they'll look like they could beat Argentina, and the next week they'll look like they couldn't beat themselves. So it's a lot of inconsistency in the first division, more consistency in the Premier Division. But again, if you have those solid players in those right positions, then you stand a chance of running the tables, as they say. You look at the fact that, and I made mention of this some time ago, when Kenny took over of North Village at the beginning of the season, the one important intricate part of that was the fact that he had a goalkeeper that was consistent this time around. Previous years, Taj had work commitments and so forth, so he couldn't be there every week. So you had somebody like Pierre, Taryn, or Zane coming back, or somebody else in goal making up, taking up the position. But having a goalkeeper, someone of the ability of Taj, has made a huge difference in not only the position, but the actual confidence of the team itself.
Most definitely, most definitely, most definitely. I mean, obviously playing down the back or being in the back line as a goalkeeper, you're always the last form of defense. And if your players in front of you don't have the confidence, then they feel they must got to do more than they have to.
Yeah,
That's a lot of energy. So it's going to be interesting to see the transfer window this year.
Yeah.
It's going to be really interesting. I'm actually excited to see what the Ray Jones boys are going to do because he's going to have a lot to say about.
Remember, now New Year's Day, they played in the final. There was a press conference prior to that competition that I put him on the spot, and he made a statement. It's time for the boys to come home. So that was his rally call to senior players who have left Colts and gone on to other clubs. It's time to come home and help. Because if you look at the makeup of the Devonshire Colts team, they are a quite young outfit with still a lot of learning to be had. So he's going to need some experienced players in there. Not saying that these youngsters won't learn fast on their job if they're willing to listen, if they're willing to work hard and so forth. But you're going to need some extra help if you're going to be competitive or even want to stay up in the Premier Division. Because remember now, it's 3 teams going down and not just 2.
I think we can have a good show for a wrap up of the 2019-2020 season.
Boy, where do you start? Where do you finish?
And then if you're like the last
start middle end.
So many twists and turns, but I think we do need to wrap up, because even the success of the national team,
right,
or the national teams.
Yes.
A lot of times we say national team, we only think about the men, but the women had a great year.
Right.
And need to acknowledge them. So I think it'd be ideal once the season is officially done. Right. I think we can wrap up.
Well, I'm glad you talked about that, because last week it became official that David Bascom was named the head coach of the Baltimore Blast. I got a chance to have a chat with him right after the announcement was made. Let's get a bit of that interview with David Bascom, the new head coach of the Baltimore Blast. David Bascom, earlier today, the Baltimore Blast announced you as the new head coach. Obviously, a new venture, a new challenge for you. Your thoughts on first the approach of being named the coach, and then you taking on the task?
Well, I guess I must apologize to you, Mr. Earl Basden, because as the head coach, I should have on my jacket and tie. So I will apologize for that, but I'm sure you can let me slide. Yeah, so once everything started to materialize, the club had called me. They did give me a call. And my first initial piece was to turn it, I turned it down. I turned down the position. And I have so many things going on. When I take on a position, I have to take it on at 100%. I have to be very clear, and I'm very focused with that, especially to continue with the coaching climate that we built here, myself and Danny. So when I figured everything out, I actually sat down with, with all the groups I'm working with, try to figure out a plan, and then I threw my name back in the hat. And here I am, here I am right now. And my biggest thing now is that the transition, not so much for me from being an assistant to coach, because the one thing special bond that me and Danny had, it was that there was so much was being offered on both sides. We was, from the planning, some of the pieces, he always was asked for my support or information. The key now is that it's the players being now getting comfortable hearing my voice a little louder, as I would say it, because it will be, a lot louder, right, than what they hear now, and having to handle that. So that's a different piece that they're going to have to deal with.
Have you had that talk with the players as of yet? What has been your message to them?
Yes, well, I've known that I was going to be in this position, for a little bit, well, not too long, but I have actually reached out to a couple of the players, a couple of the leaders, and I explained to them. And the first thing I asked them, are you okay with me being your leader? Okay, and that's the question I asked, because I don't want to be put in a position where if they don't want me there, right? Because I may not be the right fit. And it was positive feedback. Then I let them know what our next step's going to look like, what the cultural shift's going to look like, the expectations, the accountability, the new pieces that, I'm going to be implementing. So they was very positive, and on board. So that it's been good in that. So now it's a matter of preparation for me.
Well, again, congratulations to David. A lot of work. He talks about the fact that people know how to get in touch with him. So I know, Juggler, you can make a team.
Well, make it. First of all, congratulations, Coach Bascom. It's well deserved. It's been in the making, as you will know, Earl. He's been a player, a legendary player for the Blast, player coach for a few years. Well, it's basically been player coach for the last few years, and he's been coach, and I think assistant coach, and now it's his time. And I think Coach Kelly has done a great job grooming him to be the next coach. He has the support from obviously the owner, and obviously the players and around. So, and in the community.
Well, welcome back, Jay. On Saturday, we had the privilege of attending PHC Stadium to see or get firsthand look at how the possibility of cricket having training sessions. We had a chance to chat with quite a few coaches, administrators, even the president. Got a chance to interview him. Let's get a bit of that interview before we actually discuss some of the challenges in which they will face trying to get a season started. President of the Bermuda Cricket Board, Lloyd Smith, at PHC today or on Saturday, you've had the opportunity to share with clubs the procedures for getting back out training. How do you think it was received by clubs, captains, players and all?
Well, amongst our agreement, our fundamentals of getting back to training after COVID-19 was basically providing a training session that shows how social distance can be done in a training environment. So we had a very good turnout from the clubs this morning. All of them were very receptive on how it can be done. The course was put on by one of our national squad coaches, Arnold Mandas, just to show them with some of the under 19 players how they could socialize, as well as provide social distancing in a training session. So it went pretty good.
Some of the rules that are being put in place globally as well as in Bermuda are very challenging when it comes to financing some of this stuff, because when you're asking for every player to use his own ball or balls to be sanitized, how long do you think the balls will last if they have to be sanitized? Because that's not a natural shine of a ball, is it?
Yeah, perception. I think the perception and all is kind of over emphasized with how the sanitation is supposed to go. Basically, what the ICC is looking for is that if you're using a cricket ball, they're not, a brand new cricket ball, and you're out there playing, every time there's a break, they're asking guys to actually sanitize the hands, not really sanitize the ball, but really sanitize the hands. So if you start in a sanitized environment, you can continue in a sanitized environment if you actually keep sanitizing your hand. It's just the aspect of we definitely don't want, like in past, is people using just saliva to put on the balls, which creates more issues with the ball, and hopefully the sweat as well. We try to minimize as much sweat gets on the ball to keep the conditions in a better environment than it has been in the past.
The ICC have in their recommendations, the committee in their recommendations to the ICC have not said that sweat on the ball, using the sweat from your forehead, is not going to be disallowed. It's actually going to be allowed, as opposed to the saliva on the ball. Does that kind of negate what you just said as far as sweat on the ball?
Well, I wouldn't say it's negated. It's just that the science ain't there that you can contract that from sweat. You can correct the virus from sweat. You know what I mean? But here we're going to try to be safer and try to say that, please don't put your sweat as limited as much of sweat as you can on the ball. We don't want you taking sweat off your head and putting on the ball to actually try to shine the ball. So hopefully that we could be just a little bit more sanitized than ICC. We do govern our own cricket, so we're hoping that we do have a little bit more regulations in that ICC recommended, as you will see in our fundamentals for getting back to cricket. So it's nice to have guidelines from your governing body, but sometimes you also got to be more practical when it comes to your own environment.
Well, Jay, you were there with the president, hearing what he has to say regarding meetings with the Ministry of Health and obviously ICC guidelines. Where do you think is going to be their biggest challenge in trying to get a season started?
Convincing player. It's going to be, once again, it's the amateur mindset. When you see the changes or the things being implemented around the world with professionals, you understand that these guys get paid, so they almost have to follow in line whatever the guidelines are being put in place. But when you have amateurs, you have a guy say, well, you know what? I'll go fishing, or I'll go do something else instead. I don't feel like all the disruptions or whatever the case, the guidelines that they put forward. In saying that, I just think that for the safety of everybody, not just, like I said, not just the players that are there, but also going back home to their families. And I think this is what a lot of people forget about this type of virus. It's not just if you're carrying it, you can actually take it back home. So it's going to be, obviously, it's going to be odd. I'm trying to celebrate. But I mean, that's where a lot of innovation comes in. You can find, we're creative people, so we can get things done. At the end of the day, and I hate using that cliche, but it gets to a point where sport is sport. If you want to play, it's not work. If you want to play, you will play.
Yeah.
Simple as that. And whatever it takes. I mean, the ICC comes up with new rules almost every other year. Well, so we conform. So we might not like it in the beginning. We've seen that many times when it comes to bancating, and look how many times we've had arguments or brawls. But at first people don't feel like conforming, and then they have conformed. It's to me, because I just think that the biggest problem we have here on the island is our facilities. And we said this last week. This COVID-19, yes, it's been a public health crisis, but it's also exposed a lot of our deficiencies in sports, not on the field, but also off the field.
Right.
The lack of, our clubs. So when you see some of these clubs are not going to be able to even host a game because of
the challenges ahead.
Yeah. So some players only feel good if they're playing at home. Well, this the year that it's only going to probably be about 3 or 4, maybe 5 fields.
Right.
We have the official word this week, or next week, but it's going to be interesting. Yeah. We have an idea. The St. David's will probably obviously be put in because they can't use the club changing rooms. So you're gonna have to look at a field that it's big enough to facilitate. We did here PHC. We did White Hill. We did here Somerset. Mm-hmm. I'm not sure if anybody else is going to come up, but those fields, it's going to be interesting. I will be interested to see if, and I'll go into this because I know Somerset were looking to have night games 2020. Remember last year they had the competition, whatever. But remember their lights were also damaged.
Right.
And I know BFA is looking to help bring some of these fields back online for football. Yeah. I want to be some partnership to help out cricket also.
Yeah, well, I mean, it's the club, and I think they're looking to help the club itself. So I'm pretty sure that if Somerset need that assistance, probably the infrastructure committee from the Bermuda Football Association is looking to help them as well, because they need those extra night venues as in that press conference with the BFA last week. They had the lights on at PAC testing to see which ones work. They'll be doing a recon mission at Bernard Park, and I'm pretty sure Somerset and Devonshire Rec are probably also in the makings for lights, which would also help. Who knows? Devonshire Rec might be in line to have evening cricket as well if the lighting is of some importance. You know what I mean? So anything's possible with proper lighting because it's from the club's standpoint.
Yeah, I'm just wondering if the BFA and BCB are in talks together with the clubs regarding lighting.
Yeah. Well, yesterday we got a surprise because the Bermuda Cricket Board signed an agreement with Leeward Islands.
I want to thank, the Bermuda Cricket Association for seeing the vision in terms of this relationship. We on our end, we are comprised of 8 islands, including some US and British Virgin Islands. So we are divided by water in a lot of places. In every case, we have 8 islands, but we are united as one. We have a single purpose, single objective, and that is to be the best franchise in the Caribbean. And so we're happy today to be partnering with the Bermuda Cricket Association. And we look forward to a long, fruitful, productive relationship, one that will go from strength to strength and will serve both Bermuda and the Leeward Islands in a very positive way. Thanks again for the vision and for being here today.
Thank you, President. Calvin, if you want, we can throw it out to the media online. I know President has the MOU, or do you want to go straight into the MOU signing, where Mr. Lewis will then sign the MOU, and we have the official signing?
I suggest let's sign the MOU first. Let's complete all the formalities, and then the media can ask the questions.
President Lewis, take it away.
Let me try and get this down. So I don't know how you can see my signature being applied. Trying to find an angle where I can apply
Just
my.
sign it and then you can hold it up. You can sign it and then hold it up. Yeah.
And then roll it up. Okay, I will do that. Okay. All right, fine. Okay, here we go. Can you see that?
Yes.
Okay. So that's the document signed.
So the document was already signed by President Smith. So to make it fully authorized and compliant, it was now signed by the President of the Leeward Islands Cricket Board, Mr. Lewis.
Yes, and therefore the MOU, having been signed, is now in full compliance between both companies, and we start what is supposed to be and will be a beautiful relationship going forward. We now open the floor to any questions from the media.
The MOU, what are the details in it regarding both countries? What are the details?
The MOU as it stands, I will just read some excerpt to it so you can understand. The MOU speaks to cooperation between both the Bermuda Cricket Board and the Leeward Islands Cricket Board in terms of players and officials, also offering both boards the ability that players from either one could come and play in the leagues of the other, and also officials to include umpires, scorers, and so forth, in a way to broaden the relationship between both territories, with the ability of giving our players and officials exposure, which would indeed enhance the cricket between both territories.
And if you asked about what contained in the MOU, but in addition to that is the purpose of this memorandum, and I'll just read it for you as well. It states that the purpose of this memorandum is to underpin the development of what is hoped will become a long-term partnership between LICB and BCB.
Good afternoon, Earl, and good afternoon to your listeners. Trinidad and Tobago, with the lifting of some of the restrictions on our movement because of the COVID-19 virus, has seen sports such as golf and tennis return to some form of competition or some form of activity, as the case may be, not necessarily competition. The golf courses in Trinidad are opening up and allowing the golfers to use the golf course, but not opening the clubhouses. The same with tennis; they are allowed to use the tennis courts, but the tennis clubhouses remain closed. That aside, too, government has said that June 21st, I believe, is when team sports will return. So the likes of football, possibly cricket. Our cricket season has came to an abrupt end, but football is still in the air, and secondary schools football in Trinidad and Tobago is really a big thing. So kids probably might get the chance to return to the training field. That aside, water sports, and in particular, sport I'm involved in, Dragon Boat. We have just received the keys to a brand new home in the northwestern peninsula of Chaguaramas. Now, Dragon Boat is a Chinese sport. It was originated in China. It's a team sport. And as a federation now, the Dragon Boat Federation is trying to figure out ways in which to allow teams back on the water. Normally, Dragon Boat takes place with between 20 to 10 paddlers. And of course, with social distancing, you don't want too much persons bundled up on a Dragon Boat. So the idea the Dragon Boat Federation has is that to do 10-man team racing on 20-man boats, so there'll be enough space on the boat for paddlers to also have that social distancing. It's a sport where 2 persons per seat. So with the 10-man boat where you have 10 persons close together with a 20-man boat, you can afford to space all persons enough so that social distancing practices are still in place. That aside, a lot of us are looking forward to the day that, that's like you in your country and people around the world, the return of sport and also the ability for fans to get back out there. Thanks again and good evening to you.
Good day, Mr. Springer. Obviously, there's plenty more going on in sports across the Caribbean. Can you give us an update on what you have as far as Antigua and the rest of the Caribbean?
Good day to Earl Basden and to the entire nation of Bermuda on Islandstats. This is Vernon A. Springer from the Time Out program in St. John's, Antigua from Point FM 99.1 radio. It's a lovely time. It's the start of a new month, new attitude with new ideas. But guess what? It's exciting times for people in the Caribbean because the West Indies senior cricket team is going to England. Yes, you heard it here on Islandstats The West Indies senior cricket team will be traveling to England for a 3-test series. It's going to be an exciting time. We all know that there'll be no spectators, but guess what? The folks in the entire Caribbean and the folks in England will have some cricket basically to look at. Now, what's happening in the rest of the OECS? You would know that St. Vincent and the Grenadines created history with a T10 tournament. But I can say to you, that was beamed all around the world. Just imagine the tourism effect of the Vinci T10 League, which took place in St. Vincent and the Grenadines, and what that would mean for tourism. It is now time for us here in the entire Caribbean, from Bermuda down to Guyana, down to Trinidad and Tobago, to be able to get our act together. We know that CPL is around the corner, and we've also heard talk that they too are going to be playing in one venue. Trinidad and Tobago sounds like that venue. So it's going to be an exciting time for team sports. At the same time, we have to be very, very careful in terms of how we open up to team sports. What I think should be happening right now is psychologically and mentally, we need to start preparing our coaches. We need to start to prepare our parents. We need to start to prepare our communities. We also need to start to now come out of these amateur settings and begin to start to think professionally. That means no more teams, time to really set up club structures that can be able to help our young people. And most of all, hey, it's time to get back to sports, because guess what? The English Premier League is going to be back up. I'm a Manchester United fan, but for all the Liverpool fans, wow, they must be gleaming with excitement, knowing very well that the English Premier League is coming back. We see what's happening in Germany. We also know that Italy is coming back. So, hey, in a new world, sport is on its way back, and we just have to be able to rally with it. Hey, Earl, this is Vernon Springer from St. John's, Antigua, rallying with you in Bermuda. And to all the folks who are listening to Islandstats, hey, it's been a pleasure for me.
Good day, Anne-Marie. Hope all is well. Can you give me an update on the Barbados Swimming Association looking to host the 2021 Carifta Swimming Championships? I know that they were due to host the 2020, but with it being canceled, they're hoping to host the 2021. Also, I see there's some horse racing going on in Barbados, as well as if you can give me an update on the West Indies players that are presently training in Barbados ahead of the tour to England.
Well, good afternoon to you, Earl, and good afternoon to all of your viewers. Yes, you are correct in that the Barbados Amateur Swimming Association, they are pressing ahead to see if they can actually host the 2021 Carifta Swimming Championships. Now, Barbados were set all ready to host the 2020 games. They were obviously cancelled due to all the restrictions in place due to the COVID-19 pandemic that we're facing across the region and the world. So therefore, Barbados is looking to see if they can step in and host the games next year. However, there must be consideration that St. Lucia would have already had the rights to host the 2021 Carifta Swimming Championships. So Barbados is really trying to garner support from the other federations to give them a chance to host the games, having been unable to do so this year. But interestingly enough, the Barbados Amateur Swimming Association stepped in for Trinidad and Tobago to host the games this year if there were to be a games, because Trinidad outright said that they're not in a financial position to host the games after the rights were awarded to them. Barbados stepped in as a contingency plan. And I can understand where the president of the Barbados Amateur Swimming Association, Mr. Tony Selby, is coming from, in that the BASA looks to these games to generate a lot of income for the association. And in addition, some money was spent in just doing some minor upgrades to the aquatic center at Wildy just to be ready for the game. So they're looking to maybe recover some of those expenses. So I understand where he's coming from, but consideration has to be given to St. Lucia. St. Lucia is not one of those countries that is always in the mix of hosting the championships, and therefore, I'm not sure if they're going to say, well, I'm going to give it to Barbados. It might come with a fight. So we just look to see how that plays out. But yes, the BASA is pushing to host the 2021 Carifta Swimming Championships, having lost the right to do so this year given all the circumstances. Now, you would have mentioned horse racing. Horse racing is actually not happening here in Barbados. The track at the Garrison Savannah is currently under remedial work. That's the grass turf of itself. There's a regrading and replanting being done at this stage. What you're hearing about horse racing for Barbados is that one of our top trainers, Safi Joseph Jr., he is playing his trade at the Gulfstream track in Miami, and at this stage he is a joint leader in terms of wins, and he has 21 wins so far for the season. The season at Gulfstream started back on April the 2nd. They have been racing without the fans and under certain restrictions, but nevertheless horse racing has been going on, and they're expected to end the Gulfstream track season on September the 27th. Now, interestingly enough, only last week, Safi Joseph actually was behind the leader, Todd Pletcher, by 4 wins, but he was able to catch up, and he actually caught up with him on Saturday when he claimed a stakes win, and therefore that's now he's up to 21 for the season. Also, too, many of our jockeys also play their trade at the Woodbine track in Canada. They have been under lockdown, but Canada has now lifted some restrictions, and as of June the 6th, our jockeys will be back on track, including our top local jockey, Patrick Husbands. He is a 7-time Woodbine Jockeys champion, and last year alone he had 82 wins and over $4 million in winnings. He will be back riding along with his brother Simon Husbands, as well as Slade Callahan, Kevin Nichols, and Juan Crawford. So our local jockeys are actually playing their trade overseas, but in terms of horse racing here in Barbados, we're still under a little lockdown of sorts at the Garrison Savannah as they continue remedial work. With regard to cricket, as you know, the Cricket West Indies and the English Cricket Board have finally come to an agreement to host the 3-test series between the two sides. I will tell you personally, I'm really not one in favor of seeing our regional boys head to England or to the UK that had such a high level of impact from the COVID-19 pandemic, but the ECB has assured that they're going to have all protocols in place to have a biosecure environment, as they call it, when the guys leave. Now, the guys are expected to leave on June the 8th and leave the Caribbean, that is on June the 8th. The expectancy is that the Barbadian players will actually fly out before that and head over to Antigua, as the team flies from Antigua via charter to the UK directly. Now, they have continued training here. Luckily for the Barbadian players, they have with them assistant coach Roddy Eswick. He has been in charge of getting the guys here all together. They have a structure in place at Kensanova where they do it in what we call shift. There's a morning shift and there's an evening shift. So in the morning between 8 to midday, you will have the first set of players going to train, and then from 1 p.m. down to about 4 p.m. the other players actually come, and training has been almost in an isolated fashion per se. One player per dealing with the coach at a given time. So therefore, it is not a case where the players are training as a holistic group, but it's more like individual training as they prepare to head over to England. So basically, that's how things are going. Barbados, as of today, is reopening of sorts to some level of normalcy. All other retailers that would have been closed are now able to open back. However, sports is still one of the areas where our Prime Minister, the Honorable Mia Amor-Motley, decided that she's not going to make a full decision on sports as yet. Those sports that would have had the go-ahead before in the last directives that were given, they're still very active. Golf, tennis, road tennis, the marathon runners, etc., swimming, surfing. However, the other sports are still under restriction, and they are just hoping that in the next set of directives expected to come in the next week to 2 weeks, that some restrictions will be lifted and that sport can now resume here on the island. So that's it from this side of sunny Barbados. We've been having some sun, and it's great. So I do wish everybody to stay safe and to continue to push our sportsmen and women in what I think are some challenging times.
Well, Jay, both Anne-Marie and Vernon A. Springer talked about the West Indies heading over to England. Vernon sounded as if he was really excited to be able to say, I could watch some cricket. We got a chance to see some of the Barbados players actually training at the facility in Barbados ahead of meeting up with the squad to head over to England. But when you start hearing even Vernon talking about the Vinci T10 and what it could do for the country, if you look around the Caribbean, it's the only cricket going on. And people want to feel like they can go somewhere and see something. And it offered an opportunity for St. Vincent to be in the shop window.
Yeah, I mean, we saw how that's done not only with we just talked about the Gold Cup, the coverage we got on the international viewership. We saw how it worked with us in the international viewership when it came to America's Cup a few years ago. It put us in the shop window for tourism, and not just regular tourism, but also sports tourism. Yeah. And this government's been pretty adamant of trying to bring more teams to not only train here but to play here and have competitions here. Obviously, with the golf tournament, and we had a cancellation of the tennis tournament. But the Gold Cup in sailing, is that being put off this year, or they're gonna have
it's later the year? They pushed it back, so it'll be a busy October, November, because we're gonna have the golf and sailing, and we're still waiting on a work, but more than likely rugby will be in action as well.
Yeah, one thing I did take for it was about the swimming in Barbados. Hopefully, to get the swimming back. But knowing that it's supposed to go somewhere else next year, and some of these islands, just really look forward to it. So you would hope that they'll still get a chance.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. Because I mean, when you bid to host something, it is it's a big undertaking at times, and you want to make sure that you get what you put in. So. Hopefully, again, that gets sorted out and they can actually have some resolution too. Because remember, Barbados stepped in.
Yes.
Trinidad.
Trinidad.
And so they actually sunk a lot of money quickly into getting the facility ready, and then to lose that would be rather heartbreaking. So we
know that because we was preparing for Carifta ourselves.
Yeah.
And thank goodness we were able to get Carifta next year, because we would spend some money.
Now, Jay, I had the opportunity earlier this week to sit down and have a chat with the legendary Billy Joe Dupree, uh, uh, former Dallas Cowboy, Super Bowl champion. We got a chance to chat about yesterday, today, and tomorrow in the sport of NFL. Let's get a bit of that interview, and then we come back and talk about such a grueling sport, the NFL. I want to ask about the state of the game as it is today and the changes that have been made over the years. Do you think it's better for the game in which when you were playing, now that we've got all these stoppages to make sure the calls are correct as opposed to let's play the game?
Well, yeah, quite a bit of change, and basically the biggest part of the changes is the game has been made, is attempting to be made safer by different type of rules that they have, and one in line that really should be and should always be there is to protect the quarterback. But as far as the game playing itself, the years I played, the moment that ball was snapped, that guy on the other side was trying to beat me until I couldn't walk. Right? And that's in pass routes. Today, when that ball is snapped, the guy got at least 5 yards, max 10, before he can ever be touched. Shoot, hey.
If that was,
I would have loved to be in that situation.
Just gonna ask that. If that was the case back then, you guys would have been playing a lot longer, huh?
Oh, well, I'm telling you. So, well, the biggest part of the change is basically the rules, and it's a lot less contact than it has. You know, guys practice in shorts and shoulder pads, or shorts more or less and shoulder pads. Oh, 2 of the 3 or 3 of the 4 days. Yeah, we played, man. You had practice shoulder pads, and you were thumping during practice leading up to the week of the game. And personally, and this is my belief personally, is that it's like any other thing. If you condition your body and your mind to deal with situations, then you move on and not be concerned with it. So that's what I try to do, is put myself in a position, hey, when it comes around, do what has to be done and go to the next move. So I don't know whether or not this is going to occur with what's going on, but guys do not hit as much and don't have as much contact. And like I said, the only real concern in that whole process would be for the guy who's a quarterback, because shoot, he could get nailed from the blind side and be gone for the rest of the game, if not for the rest of the year.
Yeah. Earlier, you were talking about the current state of the Cowboys and them picking up on the defensive side. There's some stuff going on with Dak and contract and all. What is the latest that you've heard as far as him being signed on, I guess, as the franchise player or not franchise player, and how does that unsettle the team heading into training camps?
Well, as far as players are concerned, I don't think it really affects the players to that extent, because we went through during the course of my 11 years, myself as well as quite a few other guys went through a similar situation. But the locker room environment never changed, and the effort for the player never changed. This was just something, as it was referred to, being off stage. And being off stage is let it take its course and keep on trucking. But players, to my knowledge, and try to be as I guess as social and as friendly as to most of the conversation, never had any concerns about who was getting paid the most. That's what they would do. Find out if he getting paid more than I am, then shit, I'll just go talk to my agent, let them deal with that while I go play. See, but the thing that amazes me, and this is just time and opportunity for the players today, Let's go back to a Romo contract. I think Tony signed for $64 million for like 5 years, somewhere in the neighborhood. Now they offering Dak, what is it, 130? I think was what it was, or for 5 years. The years I played, Romo's contract would have paid for the entire team's roster for at least 3 years. So without, I would have been retired and long gone with that salary. So I don't think players have any real concern over it as a whole. I mean, it's just got a job to do, and it's just like going to work every day. You do your job, and you got something offline, and just take care of it. But Sunday afternoon, make sure you prove your value.
Bring your lunch. Yeah.
When you were playing, the NFC East was one of those things where everybody feared whenever they had to play any one of those teams, and you guys had some great battles. After watching some of the performances of those teams in that division last year, does it hurt a little bit that they've fallen so far back, or everyone is caught up and going ahead?
Yeah, well, it's a concern, and the thing is that in the East, is that the East that Pittsburgh is in? I would suspect that conference is having a similar withdrawals as well from playoff prevention, but I don't know. I mean, it's a difficult, an interesting situation, but I just don't know.
What do you think is going to have to change in Dallas for them to become the division champions and then possibly Super Bowl champions?
They have to be. I mean, they have the talent to make it to that stage, but they have to be a lot more, not a little, a lot more disciplined. You know, the thing that killed Dallas last season, they gave up more yardage and penalties, and sometimes they gained and run. And that could really kind of destroy you. You have a great play and then you got a penalty, or you have a great run and then something happens to the ball. So, and you're wide open and you miss a catch, and these things don't happen all at once. But once you review them, it looks like it's all in the same game, but it's different aspects of different games. But I think those guys we'll just have to develop that. And I just think it's discipline, man. You got to do what you got to do when it's time to do it, and put everything else aside while you're doing your work. Because I never really knew that they had 60,000 average people in the stands until the game was over. As long as that game was on, I was focused on 4 or 5 guys, and that's all I could hear and all I could see.
Well, Jay, when he got drafted in 1973. What were you doing then?
Well, I was burping.
Spitting up? You spitting up?
Burping some more. I mean, I don't know what some of the other words I was doing, but I was. I'm good, man. I was come out. So, what you, but that's what I was.
But I mean, if you look at the way the game was played back in the day, and how it is transformed into what it is today, he even indicates, it's just the way it is, and the players today have the opportunities because of players that played in years gone by. He did make a joke that the last contract that Tony Romo signed when he was playing, that would have paid the entire team for 3 seasons. Imagine that. 3 seasons.
Well, the game's been globalized since then. Yeah.
Well, I mean, it was global. It was global to a point. I mean, we watched it in Bermuda. It wasn't worldwide, world recognized at the time. We got it because we get the East Coast channels and so forth. But now you see them playing games in Mexico, they're playing games in London, and many other places are looking to have NFL games. So they're growing the game itself just by marketing.
Trying to take a page out of the NBA, actually.
Yeah.
And they've done a great job under the leadership, I believe, David Stern under that.
Mm-hmm.
At the time, I had a good friend who was actually the PR director of the NBA, Josh Rosenfeld, and he was responsible for a lot of the international competitions and different things of that nature. I won't say competitions, but the marketing of it.
Right.
Around the time when Tony Cook coached. So, I mean, you heard a lot about him in the last few weeks with the Islandstats, but I remember he was supposed to come like a year prior to the year he actually came. He decided to stay a year. And the media circus around him coming, because he was supposed to be the next big thing. He was doing good in the World Championships, I believe, at the time he played it. So everybody knew about him, but what it was going to be when he gets to the NBA. Just going back to Mr. Dupree, the legend, I heard a story with him, I believe, when he went to high school, and he said he was an athlete, always been an athlete, always had speed, always had power. But he knew he was good in math, good in sciences. He said, I could pretty much figure anything out. So he had never played. He always played, backyard or whatever. So, he went to the training session, and they gave him all these pads. So, all these pads. I don't really know what to do with all these pads because I pads. So he said he had all these pads on, and so he just tried to figure it out where each pad went, and he thought he was good about it. So he ran out on the field, and as he was running to the guys in the huddle, guys are rolling over in the grass, just laughing. I don't know what's going on here. So the coach pulls him aside and says, "Okay, you're not going to make it. You're not going to make it. You're not going to last long." And it's well, what happened, coach? So you had knee pads. So the knee pads should be covering the knees. Well, he had it inverted, so the concave side was shaking, and the other pads had up on his thighs. Well, they were showing the other way, so they were pushing up on his groin, and so the coach had to just sort him out. And you're seeing, but we're laughing about it now, but the way the game was played back then, he talked about some of the hits, but you can see it in his eyes, like that's why they played the game, was to hit somebody. By the way, we got the ball and we could score, but it's like, let me hit you. And up until this year, I believe, his record was finally broken by Jason Witten. So look how long that record, as a tight end for the Dallas Cowboys, and as some folks may say, the America's team.
Yeah. Well, Jay, last night was part 2 or episode 2 of The Captains. Got a chance to sit and talk with Lionel Can and Jacun Ednis. Rather interesting, lots of fun talk and so forth. So tomorrow night, we will see episode 2 of the Remembering When series. Tomorrow night, we will feature none other than Bermuda triple jumper Brian Wellman. Had a good conversation with Brian about his time, not only at school, not only internationally, but growing up in Bermuda as well. So those 2 series are going on, and we look forward to making sure that people get a taste of remembering back. You remember back when you was playing. So we look at all those things and reminisce, as we say, about those times.
It's a lot of times, a lot of folks don't know the story behind the decisions, or a lot of the jokes and the stories that were on the field that a lot of fans never privy to, and you'd be surprised how people got names, nicknames. You'd be surprised how people, what they were called after a certain thing. I mean, it's so many things come out in between the lines that a lot of fans say, man, these are conversations that you can have with these players.
Well, it's funny you say that because in the first episode of the Captains, there were two things that both of those guys stood out talking about. And that was the toss, when the match referee took the coin and said, well, I'm going to flip it, and neither of them knew whether it was their turn to flip it or not. And then it came down to when Jacoby said, you know what, I can't take this no more. Overs to go. Hey, look, let's end this. And Lionel ran on the field and shake his hand. No problem, no problem, no problem. But those are the type of things that people will say, oh, I forgot that happened. Or I didn't even know that happened. And that's what these things are about.
And probably don't know the whole story because a lot of people still rip Jacoby about it.
Yeah.
People ripping about it, but I remember, even like I said, during that time, I believe Gennaro was off the field at the time, and there is a rule in cup matches that if you're off the field for X amount of time, you just can't come back on the field and be a part of the situation. Right. So, that would have been the end of the day. So, who knew if Gennaro was actually going to come back on the field?
Right.
I'm sure Malachi was off the field at the time. Yeah. So, you would think those are your two at the time, along with him. Remember, there's two good builders.
Mm-hmm.
He just decided, and Clay Smith has had a history of, when we say close the blinds, lock up shop.
Hey, remember at that time they had the silverware, so
they didn't even need to offer a stroke.
Yeah. If it weren't going to bother the stumps, no need to put the bat there.
Yeah. Somebody would have said, you know what, 8 overs to go, 6 balls, or 8, I believe it's like 8 overs to go.
Yeah.
6 overs, that's 48. It's a lot of balls. They take one ball to get somebody out.
I ain't even remember the time. I'm talking about the balls. Yeah, let's get on.
I mean, I can see it both ways. Obviously, as a competitor, you just want to play to the end.
Right.
I'm going to bleed. I'm going to bleed and go down fighting. Yeah. But he said he was young. I mean, remember, he was 23, I believe.
23.
Yeah. So, and you see how everything had changed around for Somerset, too, because since then, I mean, they've had nothing but leaders on that field.
Right. And you know what? The other funny part is, look how many rules and things have changed because of decisions made in a game. So people don't want to go back to how it used to be or how it was founded and all that. So that decision then resulted in the only people that could cut the game short are the presidents of the two clubs deciding that the game's not going to end on time, and we call it a draw. So they've taken it away from the captains. I don't know why you would have the captain if you can't make a decision on the field. But it is what it is. Yeah.
Yeah, it's once again, like I said, to hear some of these stories and to know what, I believe they're even being nice about some of these stories because obviously a lot of these guys are still friends with a lot of the past players, but they were talking about some players being nervous.
Oh yeah.
And we talked about that a few times,
Well, just wait for the Gennaro Herbie interview down the road, because that's quite lively and interesting. 2005 is on a lot of people's minds.
I do want a front row seat to this one because I think I'll have some popcorn. I think I'll bring some popcorn for that one.
Well, folks, we want to thank you for joining another edition of the Islandstats Sports Show. Again, I'm your host, Earl Baston, joined by Juggling Jay. Unfortunately, Gary could not join us tonight, but we'll be back next week, Wednesday, June 10th, for another edition of the Islandstats Sports Show. Good night.
Good night.